Three. All right, a couple more questions. So, what would the Nazis do to kids and infants once they had them in the camps?
Well, uh, they were generally exterminated because they really were of no use. They could be of no help. They did keep some children on whom they ran all sorts of experiments. They did experiments on twins, and they did experiments on the children. The exact type I don't know, but I know that they did it. But generally, the children always, when they had the selections, whether you should live or die, they were generally sent to the line to die.
Got it. So, because of all these horrors, did Germany ever compensate or ask forgiveness from the Jews and the other ethnicities that they treated really badly and what happened in the Holocaust?
Well, they actually asked for forgiveness on a national level, I'm not sure about. It could be that they did, but I'm not certain about that. But they did try to compensate, and to some extent are still compensating Holocaust survivors for their properties and other damages done. There are, maybe not everybody has been compensated, because there are a lot of aged Holocaust survivors that are in very, very dire financial straits. But they did work out a compensation plan. There are also individual Germans who have tried to somehow ameliorate the terrible things that have been done. So, for instance, quite a number of them have gone to Israel and worked on the kibbutzim in Israel, and there are individuals who are trying to do other things. There's a man who has tried to identify in some of the major cities. He's working from city to city, the homes in which Jews lived, and he has a stone cut and put in front of that house with the family's name and the years that they lived there. I think they're called tumbling stones. I'm not 100% certain, but I'm pretty sure that's the term. So that is his way of trying to somehow bring back the memories of those who were exterminated so cruelly. When there's a brother and a sister who are now living in America, I believe they're journalists, and they too try very, very hard in many ways to keep the memory of what happened alive, because I think it's important that it be remembered. And there was a wonderful movie called the Paperclip, and which was done by a school in Tennessee. It's an incredible movie, and they got them one of the original cattle cars that used to take the victims to the concentration camps, and it's now set up as a museum. So there are a number of individuals as well who have sort of recognized the guilt of Germany and have tried in whatever way they can to make up for it.
So, just one more question about you. How did your family escape to Shanghai?
Now, my family was very lucky because we were living in a very small town in Poland, right near the Lithuanian border, and my father felt that that there was going to be any help or any escape, it would not happen from a small town. And so he picked up the family, which was a very risky thing to do. He picked up the family and left secretly, because he wasn't even allowed to know. They would have stopped us if anybody would have known, and took a train that was really intended only for military purposes, not for civilians. And somehow, by some great miracle, we managed to get on that train, and we came to Vilnius. We called it Vilna, but it's Vilnius, in Lithuania. And there were two wonderful events that happened there. One was that an entire seminary called a yeshiva had moved there, or had moved to the outskirts of that town. It was the only such seminary that actually escaped in total.
Which yeshiva?
The Mirror Yeshiva. And one of the students there was from Holland, and he got one of the Dutch secretaries at the Dutch consulate to give him a stamp, and he stamped everybody's visa for permission to go to Curacao, which is in the Dutch West Indies. But in order to get there, you had to go through the entire with Russia, and you also had to go through Japan. And so we had to get away to get to Japan. And suddenly a consulate opened up where there had never been a consulate before. And there was a wonderful man by the name of Sugihara, and he gave everybody visas, or transit visas, to go to Japan. He was actually ordered by the Japanese government to stop doing that and recalled home as a result of his activities. And on his way to the train at midnight, he was still stamping visas for people to go. And so that is how my family managed to get out. We went on the Trans-Siberian Railroad all the way to the port of Vladivostok, which I think is closed to civilians today, and there took a boat to Japan. We were in Japan for 8 months, and then when they entered the war on the side of Germany, they wanted to ship out all the foreigners, so they shipped us to Shanghai because Japan had occupied the coastal part of China, not inland, but the coastal part. And so that is how we managed to escape.
What was it like to live in Japan and then Shanghai?
You know, I was little, and
How old were you?
Well, when I got to Japan, I was somewhere between, I was around 3, I would say 4 by then. And so, you know, you just had a lot of fun, and you didn't worry about any of the inconveniences, but all we had was a half of a room. There was a room, and there was a curtain hung in the middle of the room, and there were 2 young men who were at one side of the room, and my parents and my sister and I at the other side of the room. There was only one kitchen in the whole building, and you know, people had to take turns with their cooking and with other preparations, and it must have been very, very difficult for the adults. But we as kids, you know, you know, we didn't know any better, and we had a good time. Japan too had the same kind of situation. We lived in a house where we only had one room, but at least the room was all ours. The only indoor plumbing they had was a common sink, and it only ran water for about 4 hours a day. Otherwise, there was no indoor plumbing at all. So that was also not great, but somehow or other, you know, my memories are generally good. We went to school. We went both to a secular school that was run by German Jews, and then in the afternoon I went to like a Hebrew school called Beis Yaakov. And you know, since everybody was living pretty much the same way, we didn't feel disadvantaged. But I do remember going to a birthday party once of a classmate of mine, and I discovered that she did have indoor plumbing and that she had a bathroom. And so the remainder of the party I spent in the bathroom. I was so excited.
Did you ever go back to Poland?
I had